This episode of the Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Thrive Fantasy, Built Bar, and ExpressVPN. Now, using promo code DTSN, our listeners can get $20 bonus cash on a deposit of at least $20 on Thrive Fantasy, 10% off their Built Bar protein bar order, and 35% off their ExpressVPN annual subscription. Once again, all you have to do is use the promo code DTSN and tell them the Downtown Rams podcast sent you. Now enjoy the show.
Aaron Donald creates the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Wood, touchdown. Picked off by John Johnson. Touchdown, Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air.
Henderson with a good run and a first down. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Van Jefferson. Everett in stride. Wow!
Play for the Lombardi.
All right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I am your co-host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co-host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you today before Week 17 of the NFL season, where our Rams take on the Arizona Cardinals in a pretty big game. There's a lot of playoff implications for multiple teams that can come from this game, but long story short, Jake, the Rams need to win or the Bears need to lose for the Rams to get into the playoffs, correct?
That is correct. And really the only one in a scenario where they must win is Arizona. So if Arizona wins, they're in, and the Rams can still get in with a Bears loss. The Bears can still get in even if they lose with a Rams win. So Arizona's playing for a lot. Pretty much it all rides on this game, and if they lose, there's no way that they're going to make the playoffs.
Right. So, as Rams fans, we should just be pulling for a Rams win. We don't want to count on anybody else to control our destiny. Although I do believe the Bears will lose. They are playing Green Bay, who is arguably the best team, one of the best teams in the NFC. So I still don't trust anything. Anything can happen. The Rams need to take this game seriously, and we need to win. And Jake, let's start with the biggest storyline about this game is that our starting quarterback is John Wolford. Jared Goff is out due to injury. He broke his thumb in the last game and had surgery, so he is out for this game. They are hoping that he can be back for the playoffs. But Jake, I know you've watched a lot of film on Wolford, and I just want to know your opinion about him going into this game and what he needs to do in order to lead the Rams to a win.
Well, yeah, I've watched so much film on him, whatever I could find, really. I'll just add real quick that I actually found out through a viewer of the YouTube channel I have. John Wolford, and I don't know if I told you this, but John Wolford played his first 3 years at Wake Forest against every single defense, knowing all the plays. There was a thing called Wakey Gate, and essentially, if you don't know what it is, this is just insane. This is past Spygate or anything. Essentially, the play-by-play broadcaster for Wake Forest literally was tipping off the playbook for Wake Forest to each individual team that they played against. So John Wolford's first 3 years, he had 33 touchdowns, 39 interceptions. So it looked like he, was turning the ball over a lot, and rightfully so. But they had the playbook. And his last year, his senior year, he went 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, had almost 1,000 yards rushing. So this is somebody that I think wasn't drafted because of it. Either way, it worked out for the Rams because he goes to the Jets, then he goes to the the AAF. He tears up the AAF. The AAF, abruptly stops all operations for good, and then he goes to the Rams. And as you saw him in preseason. I saw him in preseason. The guy can ball, and he's not as small as people think. He's not 5'9". He's not Kyler Murray. He is indeed 6'1". So he doesn't have bad size by any means. This is somebody that is going to offer a dynamic to this offense that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, Alexis, realistically, when's the last time you saw a mobile quarterback under center for the Rams? I'd probably say Austin Davis, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So Austin Davis of the St. Louis Rams in 2014. So it's a whole new dynamic. You have a guy, he's 6'1", he's a little stocky, and he can really move. We saw a glimpse of it in preseason when he hooked up on connections with Alex Bachman, friend of the show, and Simba Webster, friend of the show, in preseason. This is somebody that wants to throw the football. He's not just somebody that wants to take off and run. He will take off and run when he sees fit. And that's what I like about this guy. Ultimately, you're getting a quarterback that is ready to play for it all. He knows this might be his only opportunity as a quarterback in the NFL. He wants to make the most of it. It couldn't be a bigger stage except for a playoff game. So this is about as big of a stage as it could be for John Wolford. And he's doing it, without fans, albeit, but he's doing it at SoFi Stadium. He's doing it against the Arizona Cardinals, in which, they are now 0-7 against Sean McVay's Rams. So when it comes down to is you're going to get a guy that can work off script. You're going to get a guy that is going to keep his eyes downfield. A lot of the time when you have a mobile quarterback, their biggest issue and the thing that's very damning to them is that they keep their eyes down. They don't keep it down the field. Wolford's always trying to extend the play and extend it in a way that he can use his arm. He doesn't have lethal velocity. He's not somebody that throws rockets, but he throws good enough and has a good enough velocity where he can actually start in this league if all else goes well. Look, Cooper Kupp's out. He has COVID. I get it. But the Rams didn't have any unlucky bouts with the contact tracing. Alexis, as you know, I was really worried about that. We saw the Broncos without their entire quarterback group having to start Kendall Hinton, their wide receiver, off the practice squad at quarterback. So it's not going to be anything like that. They lose Brockers, they lose Kupp. But I actually want to turn the attention over to a guy that we've talked about. We've waited for him to progress and have a breakout game. And that's Van Jefferson. This is somebody who has gotten more reps with John Wolford than anyone. So those two, I believe, have great rapport just based on what I've been hearing. And so I'm really excited to see, somebody like Van Jefferson get action, and maybe even Simba Webster, who generated some big time chemistry in preseason last year. But it's a little different this year, Alexis, because we didn't have preseason. So we didn't get to see John Wolford. But, you asked me, the tape stands out. This is somebody that, when you're looking at your traits, and we look at it with right now with, Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence, and we're looking at it, Goff and Wentz and the 6'5" guy. Guys like this get forgotten about, but that doesn't mean they can't play ball. And I think Wolford is really going to prove that. You've already seen the videos, folks. I'm really high on Wolford, and I expect him to have a really good game against the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, well, I mean, you brought up Cooper Kupp, which was something that I wanted to talk about because he's obviously arguably our best receiver. Arizona is going to be out or is not going to have Kristen Kirk. So he's not Arizona's best receiver, obviously, when you have DeAndre Hopkins as one of their receivers. But we are both missing a receiver. Kyler Murray is going to play. And when you bring up John Wolford, I obviously haven't watched as much film on him as you have. But I think the obvious comparison is Kyler Murray. I think John Wolford, and like you said, a lot of people assume that he is 5'8", 5'9", but he is actually 6'1". You're right. I think that was surprising to me, honestly, just because of the way that he moves through the pocket and elsewhere. But I just think going against this Arizona team with a backup quarterback and looking at our offense, I think that we should be running the ball. I mean, do you agree or disagree? And if the run is stopped, I think that's when we can say, okay, Wolford, show us what you can do.
I mean, I can't say I disagree. You want to have a balanced passing attack, and you want to, obviously mix that up with runs. And this is a team, make no mistake, Sean McVay wants to operate with play action passing, but Sean McVay has not had any sort of quarterback like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some read options, things you haven't seen, maybe some pistol formations. I would not be surprised if they use Wolford like how he was used in college, because McVay has probably I tweeted this out, and I just want to explain that I'm not saying Sean McVay is done with Goff, but when you look at who he's brought in as the backups, Blake Bortles, mobile. Uh, Bryce Perkins, mobile. John Wolford, mobile. Those have been his guys. He didn't draft Jared Goff. He was already in camp. He didn't draft Sean Mannion. He was already there. The guys that he has brought out of the building, and also Brandon Allen, a guy that can take off and run. So he wants mobility. And I think, this is something he's been waiting for. I know, again, people will disagree with me, but I think he is getting the brunt of the blame. I know Jared Goff is. I'm not saying he's not. But I'm saying a lot of people believe Sean McVay has failed and has put them in this position. I would say this. Sean McVay has been held back by Jared Goff. And I think we're going to see that this Sunday. I think, having a guy like Wolford is going to allow, the possibilities are really endless when you have a guy that can move like that. And he moves well on the run. He can really hit a pinpoint, target. With the running game, Cam Akers is a game time decision. So if he plays, and I would imagine since he's a game time decision, if it's 50-50 if he plays or not, I don't expect him to have a huge, stake in the run game. But the Rams run the ball 7th in the league, as far as carries per game. And this is one of the best running teams in the league. And, I think while they didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher, people just don't really give them credit. What I will say is Malcolm Brown hasn't looked like the sharp Malcolm Brown we saw in week 1 of the NFL season. You also could see Xavier Jones, a UDFA out of SMU, as well as Raymond Calais, a 7th rounder out of Louisiana Lafayette. But that remains to be seen. So I don't think you're wrong to say run the football and then see what Wolford can do, because I think obviously this is his first game. He hasn't seen the true first-team NFL defenses, but I will say this. I'll add this tidbit. John Wolford has seen first-team NFL defenses because he went up against it. The thing I like the most about the scrimmage the Rams had, it wasn't Goff against the ones and then Wolford against the twos. They mixed it up. And if you remember during the offseason, John Wolford actually, it seemed, and we weren't there, of course, but from what the beat writers were tweeting that were there, it seemed like John Wolford had an edge on Jared Goff. This will be very interesting because I'm not saying John Wolford's more talented than Goff, but right now, John Wolford's the best option. Jared Goff with a broken thumb wouldn't be, and it's not realistic for him to start anyway. But Jared Goff hasn't played well, so let's not act like he's played well the last 2 games either. So I think this is honestly, an injection in the offense that the Rams need for sure. But I don't have any issue with your assessment that they should run the ball and try to minimize the pressure on somebody that's making their first start to, basically be the guy to send them to the playoffs or not.
Right. And that's kind of my philosophy on it, is that this is a huge game and we should be playing it as safe as possible. I do agree with you. I think that McVay is probably honestly low-key excited to have Wolford and to have a chance to do some things that he can't do with Jared Goff. Wolford is a very different type of quarterback. He's a very different game. He has a different style. He is much more like a Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson in that regard, and Jared Goff is not. So I do think that if I'm McVay, if the game is going well, if I start to think that we can start throwing the football and get the passing game more involved without it being a risk, then yeah, I'm going to try some things that I absolutely can't do with Jared Goff. I just think that in a game like this, it's not really a game that you should take risks. It's a must-win game. Again, we can't rely on Chicago losing. It obviously appears that would be the case if you were going to bet, but you can't rely on it. And, the Rams need to control their own destiny. They need to win. They need to get the job done. So I think that McVay probably will be more conservative to start off. I don't know if that's how he'll finish the game. But looking at our defense, what do you think our defense needs to do going up against this Cardinals offense, who more than likely will have Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I mean, they had a good approach the last time they played Kyler Murray. I thought they did a nice job of keeping him in the pocket, neutralizing his ability. Plus, this is somebody that right now, I don't think he's fully 100% healthy. I think that leg is bothering him. So right off the cuff, he is less mobile than he was earlier in the year when you played him. Not that much earlier because it was pretty recent when they played. But with that being said, I thought they had a nice game plan to stop him. And I think really when Kyler Murray started to get going towards the end of the game, one, it was kind of garbage time because it was a 38-28 game. kind of out of reach, and they kind of let him have his way at the end. He threw 3 touchdowns, but he only had 173 yards passing the football, and then running, he had 15 yards on 5 carries. So they did a nice job of neutralizing him. Pretty much you stick to that game plan. This is one where they had to win on all 3 phases of the football. You look at, what they were able to do, in the receiving game, in the rushing game, obviously on defense, getting to Kyler Murray twice and forcing a lot of pressure on him. And then, of course, the interception with Troy Hill, the pick 6, and then the return game as well. So, the Rams, they are the better team. Even without Jared Goff, they're the better team than Arizona. Arizona's also on the road. But Vegas doesn't like random quarterbacks coming in and trying to, save the day. And I just put up a video and I was explaining that, John Wolford is not in an unprecedented event, Alexis. I don't know if you knew this. Well, you probably did. Some of them at least. Obviously, Nick Foles, we could talk about. Tom Brady for Drew Bledsoe. But even further back, Jake Delhomme. You could talk about a guy that's coaching in the NFL right now, Frank Reich. Takes over for Jim Kelly. Leads the Bills to a 28-point comeback and a win in the wild card game against the Houston Oilers. I mean, there's so many guys you can talk about. Trent Dilfer took over from Tony Banks, a former Rams quarterback in his own right, and won a Super Bowl. I think, obviously, I'll say this, I think John Wolford, despite he's never played an NFL snap, what have you, John Wolford's better than Trent Dilfer. I feel like I'm confident in saying that. Trent Dilfer was not very good, and he had an elite defense. John Wolford has an elite defense. So I really have a good feeling about this team moving forward because I do think they're going to beat the Cardinals. But I have a really good feeling about this team moving forward because and I shouldn't have to say this, but I feel like I have to. Just because Jared Goff isn't playing doesn't mean this elite defense turns to rubbish.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I like the Rams defense better than I like the Cardinals offense. For me, the obvious threat on that Cardinals offense is DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray, of course, he's a threat, but when I look at him versus DeAndre Hopkins, I think that what we're going to see is Jalen Ramsey on Hopkins naturally. I think that they tend to have some good battles. That's the obvious pairing there. And I think that if I'm Kyler Murray, I'm probably not going to be as willing to throw to DeAndre Hopkins as I am usually because of Jalen Ramsey. So then I have to look at the other receivers, and you've got Christian Kirk out. So you have basically Larry Fitzgerald, Andy Isabella. I think Dan Arnold is the name of their tight end. So I don't know. I feel confident about the Rams defense going up against the Cardinals offense. My worry with this game is I hope that things don't get out of control quickly, because that's, I think, the only way that the Rams could lose this is if they don't have it together to start off. And I think it would be very hard to play comeback or catch up with the Arizona Cardinals, especially if Kyler Murray goes out there and plays well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it almost seemed like as soon as we started talking about how McVay is undefeated when he leads at halftime, the Rams kind of went away from the approach of playing their style of football. Like if you don't lose when you're winning at halftime, you just never have. Why would you steer away from playing that style of football? If you lead at half, don't make mistakes. Don't take risks. I mean, the Rams were up 6-3 with like 3 minutes to go on a first down, and Jared Goff threw one of the worst interceptions you will ever see in your entire life. To me, that was horrible football, and it allowed Seattle to tie it up with them getting the ball back in the second half, and they kind of took over after that. The game's a little different if he doesn't make that decision and say they settle for a field goal and go up 9-3. So I guess my point here is that obviously if you have a shot, take it. And I think they're going to let John Wolford throw the ball. I don't think that they're scared of him, to be honest with you. I really don't get the feeling. I got it early on, right? I didn't feel like Sean McVay was super sold on him, just the way he talked right after the injury. But he's really stepped up and explained, like, John Wolford is a baller. Like, he's going to do something in this game. It's almost like you have a problem if you don't like this kid. So, just hearing those things makes me feel confident. I know it's coach speak. I know it's PR. And I can be guilty of eating that up because, I love this guy. But, for people knocking him for playing in the AAF, what is he supposed to do? You play where you can find work. And I told you about, the whole Wakey-gate thing. I told you about the fact that, he balled out with the AAF. I told you the fact that in preseason, he looked really good. Well, now it's time for him to get an opportunity in the regular season and show what he's made of. And he's not fighting this battle alone. If say Cam Akers doesn't play, he still has Malcolm Brown, who again hasn't played his best football, Xavier Jones, Raymond Calais, but then his receivers, you mentioned, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, Josh Reynolds, you have Gerald Everett, you have Tyler Higbee, maybe Bryson Hopkins sees some time, Simba Webster. So I'm not worried about the lack of weapons. And for people saying the offensive line hurts a quarterback that is a statue in the pocket. I think the thing that we need to monitor here is that Jared Goff held on to the ball top 5 the last 2 weeks, top 5 longest of any quarterback. And the other guys are Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Russell Wilson, guys that run around and create. Jared Goff doesn't create. So I think with the offensive line, I've seen John Wolford escape. I know John Wolford has pocket presence and will step up. He has poise. He doesn't just stand there like a statue. And he honestly wants to get out and move. So I'm not worried about it. And honestly, I think the offensive line's been a little overblown. Again, I think, they gave up the most pressure the Rams have had since 2015 last week. I get that. But I also think that teams changed their approach. The Rams weren't able to run the football as much because teams changed their approach when they realized they didn't care about Jared Goff. They said, you know what, if you beat us over the top, you win. Great for you, but we don't trust you to do that. And Jared Goff hasn't been able to do that. So now that Wolford comes in here, he can make all the throws. He doesn't have the lack of confidence that Jared Goff has. He's not playing with a thumb injury or anything like that, like Goff would be doing. So I just really like the way this is looking for Wolford. And, we've seen it in the past. Matt Flynn came in week 17, a lot less similar in a sense. This is a game to send them to the playoffs. And Matt Flynn for the Packers was taking over for a 15-1, Packers team, Aaron Rodgers, to give him some rest before the playoffs. But Flynn came in and threw for 400 plus yards in 6 touchdowns, and ended up getting himself a contract. So, we've seen it go multiple ways. I don't know if you want to do a stat prediction. I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but I'll say this right now. I think he goes for 315 total yards, 65 on the ground. I think he gets 3 touchdowns, in which one of them is on the ground. This is somebody that they're just going to allow play his style of football, and they have guys that can improvise and talent enough where if they get them in space, they can help him out, with those bubble screens and just the fact that, even though Kupp won't play, Kupp and Woods have been number 1 as a tandem in yards after the catch. And I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, I do think that he will have a rushing touchdown based on his nature. I don't know, because part of me does think that the run game will control the offense. So I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I do think that the Rams will win. I know we not usually talk about Final Four predictions. I do think that the Rams are going to pull off a win. I'm not sure how or why, but if my best guess about how this game is going to go, I do think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by either team. I would imagine it's going to be 21-14 Rams, 21-17 Rams. I don't know why. That's just how I'm feeling. I'm nervous talking about this game because I just don't want the Rams to go out there and fumble the bag, but we'll see. What's your final score prediction?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm looking at this, and PFF has Arizona as the 31st best, the second worst run defense in the league. Now, of course, that's not based on stats. That's based on their analytics. That's based on their grades. The Bills are the worst. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic here. Could have helped the Rams, but I'm going to say you're right. The Rams are going to win this football game. Arizona's a good team. They, for the long haul, they have a franchise quarterback. They have a good coach. They're building something. But I think, and I said this, I remember saying this in our preview show, I feel like Arizona has arrived a little too early. I don't think this is their time yet. Very similar to the Bears the year they made the playoffs and didn't really do anything. I don't see Arizona making the playoffs, though. I know they scored 403 points, but they got to fix that defense. They've given up 349, points this year. The Rams have given up 289. To just explain. So, I think Arizona's going to be good for the long haul, but this year, I don't think it's it. I do think the Rams are a legit Super Bowl contender as long as they get in the big dance, no matter who's at quarterback. And I really think at the end of the day, this is meant to be. The Rams don't lose 3 straight and they don't win 3 straight, as far as this year is gone. And I mean, to be honest with you, Alexis, I don't even know if I want to be in the playoffs if the Rams lose 3 straight. That would be awful. But I will say this team is better than people are giving them credit for. They lost to the Jets. Okay. That loss hurt. They just lost to the Seattle Seahawks, who have a chance, which, by the way, this helps the Rams because the Packers will be playing for the number 1 seed. They have to win in order to make sure nothing happens. They're playing the Seattle Seahawks. They're playing for first place. Seattle Seahawks are still in contention to get the number 1 seed in the NFC, and that's the team the Rams just lost to, who they beat earlier in the year. So by no means am I saying this team's done. And by the way, if they get past this week, 1, I would start Wolford unless he falls off a cliff in this one, and 2, they're going to be getting guys back like Andrew Whitworth. They could get Taylor Rapp back. They could get Micah Kaiser. So you're going to get more depth. Of course, they'll have Cooper Kupp and Michael Brockers more than likely. So all of a sudden, this team is starting to get healthy. They just have to make sure they can finish and get to the playoffs. And I think they do that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the thing about week 17 is there's a lot on the line from multiple teams, which is what makes it fun and so nerve-wracking, especially when your team is included in that group, which we are. So again, we need to win or the Bears need to lose, which again, the Bears are playing the Green Bay Packers. So think what you will about that. But I never try to rely on other teams to, get us where we need to go. We have to do it. We have to go out there. We have to win, especially because like you said, say we were to lose and the Bears lose or whatever. You don't want to have that vibe or that momentum going into the playoffs. That's usually never a good sign. So we need to go out. We need to play well. We need to do what we need to do. And I think that we'll get there. So we will see, but we will come back with a game breakdown tomorrow. But until then, as always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheAlexisCraft. You can follow Jake at JKBoganDTSN. And you can follow Downtown Rams on Twitter and Instagram at Downtown Rams. So almost there, guys. Big game tomorrow. So exciting. Take care, stay safe, and go Rams.